All right, welcome everyone to the deep dive. For this session, we're tackling something a little different, definitely fascinating though. We're diving into a source that one of you shared. It's an audio recording, actually. Someone detailing their own small-scale, kind of homemade crawfish breeding setup.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's not like a, formal study or anything. It's much more like getting a personal tour, hearing straight from someone who's, well, got their hands dirty and is figuring things out as they go, sharing the practical stuff, the successes, and yeah, sometimes the hard lessons learned.
Exactly. So our mission here is to really unpack this firsthand account, pull out the practical tips, the maybe surprising observations, and the key insights from this, very personal DIY aquaculture project. What can
Yeah.
we actually learn about raising crawfish, even just on a small scale, from someone just doing it?
Okay, so let's start with the basics. The actual setup. You mentioned it's this conversational audio clip, right?
Yeah.
Feels very immediate. And the tanks themselves, they were made from repurposed industrial drums. That definitely caught my ear. It's pretty unique, isn't it? They specifically used recycled car wash soap drums. But here's the really critical bit. They only used the red drums
Only the red ones. Why?
because they did their homework first. It turns out those particular drums contain mostly canola oil and water with minimal bioaccumulative properties.
Bioaccumulative properties. Okay, can you break that down real quick?
Sure. Basically, it means stuff that can build up inside a living thing over time. So minimal bioaccumulative properties means whatever tiny residue was left wouldn't likely build up in the crawfish, harming them or, making them unsafe down the line. It really drives home a key point. If you're repurposing any container, especially for living creatures, you absolutely have to research what was in it before. It's not just like a good idea, it's essential. It could save you a lot of grief.
Right.
And yeah, they just cut the tops off these drums. Pretty straightforward.
That's a huge takeaway right there, knowing
Yeah.
the container's history.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have these drums, but apparently crawfish are little escape artists.
Oh, yeah. They seem to have this tendency to want to climb out and explore. So for the main breeding tank, they added a simple skirting around the top edge.
Skirting, like what kind?
Get this, it was made from a cut-up promotional ad sign, just stapled and siliconed around the rim. A very DIY solution for crawfish that like to jump.
Huh. Resourceful. Now
Okay.
what about the baby tank? Same issue.
Similar problem, but an even simpler fix. They just found that keeping the water level lower, only about half full, was usually enough to keep the smaller ones from popping out.
Okay, now this next part from the audio really surprised me. Their approach to water management. You'd think pumps, filters, maybe UV sterilizers, all that complex stuff, right? But what they described was incredibly, well, basic.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Their account says they use no filtration at all. Zero.
No filters. Just how?
The core method relies completely on aeration, just pumping air into the water. They mention using a 40-gallon aerator, which suggests a decent amount of air for the tank size.
Just air. That feels so wrong, doesn't it? For keeping water clean enough for aquatic life.
It totally does. But their experience, at least according to the recording, suggests it works because crawfish are apparently really hardy critters. They're described in the audio kind of bluntly as mud animals and bugs. So the insight they pulled from this is that maybe these guys don't need super complex, expensive water systems if, and it's a big if, they have enough oxygen dissolved in the water from the aeration.
So they're tough when it comes to, like, natural muck and their own waste, but the account also mentioned they're super sensitive to other things.
Exactly. That's the flip side. While they can handle a bit of mud, they are extremely vulnerable to things like inorganic pesticides, herbicides, industrial chemicals, that kind of stuff. Those toxins can wipe out a whole population incredibly quickly. It's actually why finding healthy crawfish in a natural pond is often seen as a good sign, an indicator that the water doesn't have much industrial runoff.
Okay, let's shift to behavior. This is a really big theme in the audio. They kept stressing this crucial need for, well, personal space. Apparently, crawfish just don't like neighbors.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. The recording is very clear. They don't do well with each other. They have this very aggressive and cannibalistic nature.
Yeah.
Trying to raise them packed together without accounting for that, it's basically setting up a crawfish battle royale.
Oof. Okay, so what's the solution then, if they're naturally aggressive like that?
Hiding places. Lots and lots of hiding places. Give them ways to get away from each other.
And how do they do that specifically?
They used about 30 to 40 pieces of honeycomb-like material. Sounds like maybe some kind of plastic grid. They siliconed these pieces together and spread them across the bottom of the tank. Oh, and a practical tip they shared. Make sure you let that silicone cure fully, like 24 to 48 hours, before adding water. Otherwise, the uncured silicone could leach stuff into the water.
Good tip. So did all those little hiding spots like mini condos completely stop the aggression?
Well, the person in the audio is pretty honest about it. It helps. It definitely reduces the conflict significantly. But occasional murdering each other, as they put it, still happens. It's more like managing the problem, not totally eliminating their grumpy, aggressive instincts.
Right. Okay, food. Obviously crucial. What did they figure out was the right thing to feed them? And maybe more importantly, what was the big catastrophic mistake they mentioned making?
So, based on their trial and error, the food they landed on was sinking loach pellets.
Sinking pellets. Why is the sinking part important?
Because crawfish are bottom dwellers. If the food floats, they won't really go for it or might not find it easily. So it has to sink down to where they hang out.
Makes sense. And the mistake.
Right.
One that killed off that whole first batch.
Yeah, that sounded like a really tough lesson. They tried feeding them table scraps, specifically meat scraps and animal fat. Big mistake.
What happened?
Their theory from the recording is that the fat basically dispersed in the water, maybe created a film on the surface, or just generally fouled the water chemistry so badly that the crawfish couldn't breathe properly through their gills. It wiped out the entire batch. And apparently the smell was just horrendous.
Wow. So sinking pellets good, greasy leftovers bad. Like really bad. A very stark example of how one wrong move can just crash the whole system. Okay, moving into breeding then and managing the babies. How did they even tell if a female was, pregnant?
You have to look closely, periodically check the females. They look for what's commonly called a berry. It's the cluster of eggs she carries attached underneath her tail. If you see that, she's buried or pregnant.
Okay, so you spot a buried female. Can she just stay in the main tank with everyone else?
Nope. Absolutely not. And this goes right back to that aggression issue we talked about. Buried females have to be separated. The audio mentioned using dividers, maybe glass panels, or even just putting them in separate smaller tanks or cubes.
And they need to stay separated until when?
Until the eggs hatch, and crucially, until the tiny little baby crawfish stop clinging to the mother and start moving off on their own. Because, and this sounds brutal, adult crawfish, including the mother sometimes, are likely to eat baby crawfish. Even their own.
Seriously?
Their own babies.
Yeah. The person in the recording put it pretty bluntly. Crawfish are pretty stupid, and they're pretty aggressive, and they're pretty hungry. So yeah, protecting those tiny vulnerable babies from all the adults, mom included, is absolutely essential if you want any to survive.
Okay, so beyond the tanks, water, hideouts, food, and separating moms, what other practical details or observations jumped out from their experience, this sort of first run?
Yeah, there were a few other interesting nuggets. They figured out how to sort of judge health by behavior. If a crawfish is feisty, aggressive, hard to catch, that's actually a good sign. Means it's healthy and the water's probably okay.
And if they're sluggish?
If they're just sitting there, immobile, not reacting much, that's a red flag. Something's likely wrong with the water quality or temperature or something. Okay, good to know. Feisty is good. What about other equipment? Did they mention anything besides the aerator?
Well, they mentioned initially they tried using both an aerator and a pump, thinking more was better, maybe. But they learned through just watching that the crawfish really only seemed to need one or the other for oxygen, not both. So they stuck with just the aerator. They even mentioned, adding extra sections to the airline tubing to get it positioned just right, angling it down. Apparently, the crawfish sometimes block the air stone briefly, but it wasn't a major issue.
Interesting. And temperature control. That
Yeah.
came up too, right?
Yeah.
As being really important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely critical year-round.
Mhm.
In the summer where they needed active cooling. They used a window air conditioning unit, but noted it was pretty expensive to run.
And winter.
Winter, too. They mentioned getting snow, even in West Texas, where this was apparently located. So they needed a space heater running continuously, managed by a thermostat, just to keep the tank water from getting too cold. Seems like stable temps are key.
Right. Avoiding big swings.
Yeah.
What about how fast they grew? Was it quick?
Their observation was that the growth in their tanks seemed kind of slow. Maybe 7 to 8 months to get to full adult size. They thought this might be slower than in the wild, based on what they had heard. They even wondered if maybe being crowded in the tank might be stunting their final size a bit. Plausible. And sort of the big overarching theme they kept coming back to was just the learning curve. They were very upfront. This was their first real attempt. They weren't experts by any means. They even shared this piece of aquaculture lore they'd heard that you don't really get good at something like this until you failed quite a bit. The saying was something like you need to kill maybe 1,000 of them before you really get it right consistently.
Wow.
And they admitted, yeah, they'd probably already killed a couple hundred just in this initial learning phase.
Killing a couple hundred just to figure out these initial steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really highlights that this isn't just like assembling IKEA furniture. It's a dynamic, living system. And learning involves real, sometimes harsh feedback. So let's bring this all back to you listening in. This deep dive into one person's, very hands-on crawfish project. It's not just about how to raise crawfish. It really shows how much specific knowledge, careful observation, being adaptable, and a lot of trial and error goes into even what might seem like a small, relatively simple project when living things are involved.
Absolutely. From figuring out the hidden dangers in recycled materials, like those drums, to discovering the surprisingly simple water needs basically just good aeration. It's all learned experience. And then understanding the behavior, that absolute necessity for hiding spots, because they're just fundamentally aggressive, cannibalistic roommates, really.
Yeah.
And learning from those critical mistakes, like the feeding disaster with the table scraps. Such a powerful example of learning by doing, sometimes the hard way.
It really underscores the importance of tiny details too, doesn't it? Like the food having to sink, or the vital need for stable temperatures, or separating the buried females and babies. Every single point they shared felt like a lesson someone had to learn, probably because something went wrong first. And it leaves us with that really stark thought, doesn't it? Born from their own struggles and that community wisdom they mentioned. You don't get anything like this right till you've killed at least 1,000 of them, right?
It's definitely a challenging idea to sit with.
So the final thought for you to maybe ponder, what does this idea, this philosophy of learning through potentially significant loss, this acceptance that mastering something complex might involve a whole lot of failure first, what does that tell us about how we gain expertise in any complex system, whether it's aquaculture or coding or cooking or anything else? Is failure on a sometimes painful scale maybe an unavoidable part of the path to true mastery? Something to chew on?